Our next speaker is Tim Draper. Tim Draper is a Silicon Valley legend in terms of venture capital. Unfortunately, though, he could not travel here today to Switzerland, and he'll join us instead digitally. He's a founding partner of Draper Associates and DFJ, two of the best-known venture capital firms in Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, having led investments in Skype and Twitter and Tesla, and the list goes on and on. He's also a big proponent of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain technology, and has participated in several ICOs, which is quite remarkable within the venture capital arena. He's been listed among the most outstanding Harvard alumni. He's among the top 10 on the Forbes Midas list, and as one of the 100 most powerful people in finance. And now we're going to try to Skype in. We're going to see how this works. So this is an experiment. Let's see if we can get Tim on. Hi, Tim. You see me? Oh, hey. Let's get the tone going.
Jason.
We're still working on the tone. We unfortunately don't hear you, but you're very visible and clear in picture. Looks like you understand me. Yeah, we can do the hand thing. Exactly. It's like, yeah, there we go. Well, it looks like we're having fun either way, but let's try to fix this audio issue. Just looking over to the technician here. How are we doing on the audio? I think they're a little clueless as to how to get your audio on. Do you think there's anything you can do on your end? There's offers from the audience to just call you on the landline. Looks like you got a network here. Shall we try to call the landline? Looks like it. The audience is, already out. Too late. Sorry. Here we go again. Tim, can you hear us?
Are we good now?
Oh, excellent. Yes, we sure can hear you.
Oh, terrific. Great, thank you.
Welcome to Switzerland, Tim.
I thought I'd do it all in sign language, with the tie and the thumbs up.
Yeah, we were totally feeling it. This is amazing. We could communicate even without the tone. We all got it. We're incredibly excited to have you here, Tim. And you're one of the few venture capitalists which really has gone for a blockchain technology and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies at a very early time. And you've stuck with it. You've said, I think, at some point, why should I sell any cryptocurrencies? It's like I'd be trading the future for the past, and that sounds like a terrible idea. And so, incredible to have you here. I think investors, especially those who are maybe not yet quite as long in the space as you, might be interested in what's your advice, and what are some of the lessons learned for crypto investing that you could share with us. And I'll just give you the stage.
Great.
I'll head off, and you do your thing.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much, and thanks to the Crypto Summit and Nanovision for putting all this on. You guys are great. It was interesting to hear some of the last speaker. I heard some of the end of it, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting, because I think Switzerland is starting to recognize something that I've been focused on a long time, which is regulatory competition. If you have heavy regulations, you lose your business. Switzerland, it's fun talking to Switzerland. you had the tiger by the tail. Everyone was going to do their ICOs through you, and all you had to do was make it easier for everybody. And instead, the regulatory bodies got in there and they made it tougher. They kept putting more and more barriers up, and so people went to Singapore and to Gibraltar and to Cayman and to other places because it got too regulatorily heavy. And I do feel like governments now have to compete for us. We can move. We can go from country to country. I mean, there's still some sort of weird patriotic loyalty to countries, but I think people are starting to recognize that they can move, and we can Skype anywhere, and we can handle the communication systems anywhere, and so we can choose. We can pick and choose the government that's right for us. And Switzerland had an enormous opportunity there, and I think that they've lost their big opportunity. But maybe they can bring it back by being regulatorily light. It's really interesting. It's great to see all you investors out there. Somebody asked, where should I domicile my ICO? Yeah, I think it's Liechtenstein in Europe, but it's Gibraltar everywhere else, maybe Singapore. The Swiss had a really interesting structure, but we had real trouble with it because they set it up so that there were two things. There was a nonprofit and a for-profit, and the nonprofit was supposed to raise all the money and own most of the tokens, and they would feed the money and the tokens into the nonprofit, and the for-profit and nonprofit had to be run by two different people. And with Tezos, we ran into real problems with that structure. Fortunately, we've got some rational people working on it now, and we think Tezos is going to be one of the great tokens of our time. But beware of people's incentives. Beware that if you're a regulator, beware that people can move, and that if you're too heavy-handed, you're going to lose all your customers, all your constituents. And if you're an ICO issuer, then I highly recommend that you go to the place that's the easiest for you. And if you're an investor, here's what was the shocker to me. When I first saw an ICO, fortunately, I asked a lot of very tough questions and pointed questions to figure out exactly where all the money goes and where all the tokens go. It turns out when you invest in a company that is doing an ICO, there are three pies. You know, it used to be there was just one pie. There was the equity pie, and the equity pie would be divided according to, you put in some money and there's an equity pie. Well, with tokens, there are now three pies. And the first pie is the equity pie, because there is still a for-profit organization there. And that could end up being where the entrepreneurs move all their efforts. And so that's the old way of doing venture capital. And then there's a pie that's the token pie. How are the tokens split up? And if for some reason the founders are treated differently than the company is in the token pie, you've got to ask some serious questions. I don't think it's appropriate for a founder to sell you 10% of their business, and then the founder gets, say, 10% of their of these tokens separately from the company. because then you're not participating in the company. And then the third thing is the cash. A bunch of cash comes out when people buy tokens. And where does that cash go? And what's it going to be used for? Those are all really good questions. And when I say cash, I mean fiat cash. Or sometimes it comes in the form of Bitcoin or other crypto, but it's much more readily exchangeable than the token that they're issuing. So that's kind of my advice to investors who want to participate in the token economy. And my other advice is do it. This is one of the greatest moments in the history of the world that we've ever had. There was the Iron Age and the Bronze Age and the Industrial Age and the Internet Age. There is the Bitcoin blockchain crypto age, and this age is bigger than any of the other ages because it's global and it's decentralized and it completely transforms the world. And let me get into that. There are a lot of ways you can think about making change. What we've noticed is that we've made the most money and created the biggest and most exciting companies when we found an entrepreneur that was using a new technology to enter a very large industry, and that industry was run by a monopolist or oligopolist who were providing bad service at a high cost to the customers. And that happened, the internet came along, and that happened in many, many industries, in communications with Skype, in information with Google, with Napster changed the music industry, but eventually it was iTunes and Spotify. All of these industries got changed. They were all run by monopolists and oligopolists. And when people came in with the internet, that new technology, all of a sudden, you had an opportunity. You saw entrepreneurs with an opportunity to build a wedge into that marketplace and then expand into that marketplace. And Skype did that beautifully. They cut into the long distance carrier business. And they grew and they became the biggest long distance carrier in the world. So that's what I look for in a startup. I look for a company that is taking a new technology and applying it to an industry that could potentially change, that is currently run by a monopolist or an oligopolist and providing bad service at a high cost. And the blockchain came along. Well, first I got to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin came along, and there was a major breakthrough in currency. And all of a sudden, there was something decentralized that I could take from country to country without any decrement in my value, and I could spend it in any country. It was an easy money to send across borders. It was money that is not subject to the political whims of some country or another. And I started to think that this was having a real global currency was something that was going to really change society. And you can read my book to figure out how I actually came upon it all. It's called The Startup Hero. But now that blockchain is the perfect ledger, and you can take a perfect ledger and do a lot more interesting things with it. A perfect ledger can mean that all your healthcare can be on one blockchain, and you can keep track of all your health records, all your Fitbit results, everything you've eaten, all the excursions you've had, all the travel you've done, your blood tests, your ancestry. You can put it all in one place on the blockchain, and as we all do that, we're going to have amazing information, and that information will be incredibly valuable for healthcare. And people will be able to do deep learning with all that big data, and a doctor will become more of a consultant, because what they will do is refer to the cloud and then interpret it. And so, 12 years of memorization might go away. It might be more like, handling things humanly and interpreting. So healthcare is going to change in a big way. Drug companies just pushing some drug that worked on 40% of the population on everybody, that's going to go away. Because that a drug on me and a drug on you might have entirely different effects. But they're just happy to just pound those pills out and force us in some way or another to take them. Healthcare is a big one. Banking and investment banking and venture capital are all getting changed as we speak. There's the old way of having monopolistic, oligopolistic banks, that's gone. Anybody who's ever used a ledger to buy crypto recognizes that you've got this ledger, it's like a USB thing, and you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I don't need that bank. I don't need to support all those people in that big, huge, beautiful building that is a bank. Now, this is really tough news for you in Switzerland, because I know Swiss banks are a big deal. But I think there's an opportunity for Switzerland to reclaim the high land here and jump in front of this crypto world and appreciate it and accept Bitcoin and become, like Japan, say, hey, Bitcoin's a local currency here, and it's a recognized currency. But I want to get into the final part here, which is government. The government is the industry that provides the worst service at the highest cost and always run by monopolies. And all of a sudden, there's this whole part of government that's virtual, this whole layer that's virtual. There's the terrestrial part, and that probably won't change too radically with this new world. But there's although they're going to have to compete for us, because we'll move to another piece of territory if we don't like what the government's doing. And we'll rally in social media if we don't like what the government's doing. Anyway, there's this virtual layer of government, and in Estonia, they've already done it. They've already started to reach outside their borders and say, hey, we can provide services to people outside our borders. They don't have to be here. And that has actually made it so we can start thinking about virtual governance as a competitive force. And if we've got virtual government as a competitive force, all these things that government does that are insurance policies in effect, healthcare insurance, welfare, pensions, redistribution of income, managing taxes and government programs, they are all now subject to being a part of the blockchain. And this could end up being a remarkable time where amazing evolutions and revolutions happen, and you guys get to be a part of it. And as investors, jump in, hold on. This is going to be an amazing wild ride. And with that, I think I'm out of time, but I'd be open to a few questions if the technology will allow it.
right, Tim, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you well.
Excellent. So we don't have too much time, but I do want to give time for a question. Who would like to ask Tim a question? Hands up now. Yep, I see you. You went up right straight there. Mike is coming. Just hold on, because otherwise Tim will not be able to hear you. Sorry, behind there, yes? Just a little bit of patience. It's a big room with a big crowd.
Hi, Robert Levin of Emerging Star Capital. Tim, it's terrific what you've done in your career. You have deep insight into innovation and the role of government. My question is, what kind of platforms do you envision 5-10 years from now for, let's say, decentralized policy solutions being promoted by smart groups like Stanford University or Draper University? So more policy entrepreneurship financed by crowdfunding on the blockchain or future distributed ledger technologies. If you can give us, A, your vision, 2, the techniques.
Sorry, I didn't hear 2, Robert.
Your not only vision, but the techniques of launching, let's say, policy-oriented solutions on the blockchain that are decentralized and then implemented locally but financed regionally, for example.
Yeah, great question. This is a really exciting time for this. The way I'm looking at it, my vision is not one where I'm setting any kind of a policy or trying to create some form of government or another. My vision is that governments, like industry, are now going to be in a position where they have to compete for their constituents, first at the terrestrial level and then at the virtual level. And when there's that competition, great things happen, and they do great things for their constituencies. When you have a monopoly, they get overbearing. They charge a high cost for bad service, and that's what's been going on all across the world. Every government, everywhere around the world, is charging too much for bad service. And now there is this new way of governing, at least the virtual part of governing, that can be a competitive field. And I think that's what's really going to be the key. You can actually, and a lot of these ICOs are coming out with lots of interesting new ways of thinking about how they govern their constituents. I guess it started with Bitcoin. Bitcoin was a proof of work system. And then Tezos said, no, you want to do a proof of stake. And then now there's proof of work, proof of stake. Now there's proof of identity. There are going to be many, many, many different types of governances that I believe that will come because of the creativity of the people and the fact that suddenly there is a competitive field here. And so I think that's what's really going to be a really dynamic field. We are looking to invest very heavily in anything blockchain in government and anything blockchain in healthcare. Now we'll look at anything. We're looking at vertical takeoff and landing. We'll look at anything. But these are 2 very hot buttons for me because I think that they're enormous industries that really need changing, and we got a bigger opportunity to do it. Is there a question? I'd like it if you guys, if you could point to a girl or a woman to ask a question, because it's always fun to, sometimes they aren't bold enough. So come on, go be bold and be empowered,
all right,
women.
Second round.
Tim, it's Adriana here. I'm from Master Ventures. My question to you is more from the beginning when you're talking about ecosystems and how the laws from a city can bring or take people from that ecosystem and to grow new ecosystem based on that. Can you elaborate a little more?
Yeah, we've built a very competitive ecosystem at Draper University and Hero City we created a university that has attracted people from 72 different countries. It's only 5 years old, and we already have students donating scholarships back. And that creating an ecosystem that has that virtuous cycle is very important. Now, the Silicon Valley has an enormous edge here in ecosystems because they have built this whole platform for change. They've built a platform for innovation and change, and everywhere you go in the Silicon Valley, people are saying, well, how can we improve on what these guys have done? How can we improve on what these guys have done? And so you're always looking for, some sort of new creative revolution coming from the Silicon Valley. A lot of other parts of the world are much more stagnant, where they say things like, oh, let's be realistic. Whenever you hear let's be realistic, always think this is somebody who doesn't want any kind of change. They like it just the way it is. Saying the word impossible. Anything we can imagine is possible. It's crazy, but I grew up watching Star Trek, and all of those things, just about all of those things, except for the Starship Enterprise, have been done. We have the communicator, we have the tricorder reading, we have the medical device that just sees you from outside your body. If you can imagine it, it can happen. And so I always say, imagine something extraordinary and something great for the world, and it will happen. So I think ecosystems can be built anywhere in the world. We have a big lead in the Silicon Valley, but all these other parts of the world have a huge opportunity now, and quite a bit of that has to do with a supportive government, and if they are supportive, people will go there, and if they are not supportive, they will leave. China had Deng Xiaoping, and he created freedom in China for 40 years. China grew like crazy in those 40 years. And now they've got a president who's making huge mistakes. He's blocking everything. He's controlling everything. And whenever you see governments control, that brings poverty and eventually slavery. Whenever you see governments give freedom and open up, that's when the people become wealthy and prosperous. So freedom equals wealth and prosperity. Control equals poverty and slavery. People say, oh, but we need control. Well, those are people that say, I know better than you do what to do with your life, your money, whatever, and they are the ones who are keeping us down. So make sure that you're not one of those. Make sure you're one of those people that says anything is possible, and let's be unreasonable.
Tim, we're definitely not one of those, because we live in Switzerland, the most decentralized and democratic country. So hopefully, just last question for the audience. Guys, what do you think? Should we next time do like the full Skype-only conference? Who is for that? So you hear that? Next time you really need to come here. A lot of reasons to be here. Nice skiing still possible, Swiss chocolate, and all the watches, So please, next time.
I have never been skiing in Europe. I would love to come skiing in Switzerland.
Well, you're welcome anytime, and you have an audience and a lot of people who are incredibly excited to have already experienced you via Skype. So just imagine, as you would say, what might happen if you come to Switzerland.
But thank you very much for being with us, at least remote. Technology was at our service and it worked. and we didn't have a heart attack.
No heart attacks here. Yep.
Thank you so much, and
Thank
all
you
the
too.
best. Bye.
Bye
Thanks
from
so
Zurich.
much.